Yeah, you mentioned Joey, and he's actually, um, for me, you and him together are just one of my absolute favorite rhythm sections of all time. And you really have a special thing together. I was wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on your relationship with him and how it evolved throughout the years, and what you've learned from him, maybe, or what you've shared.
Yeah, I think from the very beginning we had an affinity for the beat, the pulse
Yeah,
in the music. And we both kind of vibrate the same way in terms of where we feel the subdivisions and how the beat has a life and how it bounces. And I think that from the very beginning we both realized we had this kind of affinity, and I look for ways to try to play with him. And it's really started in the 80s with Piero Nunzi, I think, yeah,
right.
for the most part. Although we knew about each other from my Woody Herman days in the late 70s. I think we first played together in a hotel room, and he was playing brushes on a phone book or a newspaper or something, and we were jamming in the hotel room. Something like that. Anyway, Joey's great. Great sense of humor. I love hanging with him too. It's not just the music. He's a really fun cat to be with.
Mm, absolutely. Yeah, and especially these bands with John Abercrombie, the Quartet, is one of my favorite bands. Maybe you can share some memories of that band, because that band has played together a lot and made 3 albums, I think.
Yeah, we toured a bunch, a few years, and made those 3 records. And Abercrombie was a wonderful kind of leader in a certain way for musicians like Joey and myself, because he presented structures that were pretty open and allowed for a lot of creativity from the rhythm section. And so sometimes you could take a tune and just create a whole different personality with it, feel wise, tempo. It could be anything at any time. So it was wide open. And John was a brilliant kind of. I think John even said his favorite band, though he's a leader, he says he liked being a sideman in his own band.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it reflects. I think that's how it sounds. It sounds like an integrated unit all the time, where every member is contributing their creativity to the improvisations. Basically that's what they are. Structured improvisation.
And another great band, which is very very dear to my heart, is the trio with John Taylor. He was my teacher. So
Oh yeah.
That's my favorite record of his, Roslyn.
We miss him. He was a brilliant pianist, but an incredible composer, I think. And I don't know if he's underrated or not, but he sure deserves a lot more accolades.
Yeah. What was your experience like with him as a band leader?
I think it was good. I mean, he had an idea about the kind of tunes he wanted to present. Again, his rhythmic thing was kind of up and buoyant and driving,
Yeah.
and but he could also be, introspective and mysterious, and he had all this different aspects to his vocabulary, pianistically speaking.
Mm.
You can get a lot of different color out of the instrument, and he liked to explore the whole range, from bottom to top. But I find, I don't know if it's a British thing or a cultural, but I actually feel this cultural identity, in his writing, his British sensibility, and I really like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
I have a couple of bootlegs from you guys, from that band,
Really?
From the trio, and there's a really really special one. I mean, I love all of them, but there's the one which I had first when I was a teenager, and that's from the Domicil in Dortmund.
Wow.
And you guys really go for it. I mean, on all of them, but especially on that one. It seems to me like you guys want to get lost together.
Yeah.
On
There's
all
that
levels.
aspect of things.
On all levels, like rhythmically, and harmonically, and in structure wise, but it's with a sense of communion and camaraderie where you can't get lost in a way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. You don't find that kind of chemistry all the time, and when you do, you just kind of like a child in the playground. You just kind of can't stop.
Absolutely. And all of you guys, you have that childlike energy when you play together, with all the sophistication, in your backpack in a way.
Yeah.
Always there to help you, but that frees you up so much that you can do anything in a way. And I wonder what you personally did for that. I mean, it has to do, I suppose, with grounding yourself with all the knowledge about the music and about time, rhythm, harmony, and sort of all these things. But yeah, how do you become more free?
Yeah, I think for me it started playing with Abercrombie and Erskine. I mean, I was always interested from the Bill Evans days and all of my saturation listening to the Bill Evans trio in my early youth. I was interested in that obfuscation of one. Where is one? Well, it's there, but how is it that they are playing over the bar line and obscuring where the top of the bar, where it is? And Bill often he displaced the harmony, so it would disguise kind of where you were in the bar. I got used to that kind of thing, playing with Bill and listening a lot to Bill Evans. And then later, getting to play with John Abercrombie and Peter Erskine, we were, again, exploring aspects of freedom within structure. So I got a lot more accustomed to integrating an eight bar segment of time. So I could really, you get grounded that way when you play with good musicians like that. Peter, his time is impeccable.
Yeah. And
he's so grounded, and it just allowed me more freedom to maneuver horizontally. It happened more later in my career playing with Paul Motion as well. He was an amazing drummer with a sense of pulse. It was unbelievable, but his where he was in the form was never in doubt, even though he could leave a lot of space, or he could break up the phrasing so you wouldn't realize you're in a 32 bar form or something, but you knew it was there, but he played through it, so it was fluid in that way. It was really understanding that there is a structure at play is liberating. I hear everybody talk about free playing. Well, I'm a free player, but I think the most freedom that you can really have fun with, to me, is if there's some structure being implied. And even if it's a simple structure, like a 12-bar blues, structure has integrity, So when you're playing something freely over the structure or around it or through it, or destructuring the structure, at least you'd have some points to grab to and play towards and from and within. So that's kind of how they're going. And something Joe Lovano said to me years ago, we were in a master class somewhere, and I heard him say that a player has to have at least two rhythms going on in his head or in his body.
Yeah.
The one that we're all relating to, the pulse, and then the other one that you're making shapes with. So you have these at least two counterpuntal things going on time-wise internally, so that you know where you are in the form. It's a practice, it's a skill set, but if you do it enough with the right players, it's really fun to play that way and explore things. And then then it doesn't matter if you are adhering to a strict pulse. Even if you know the harmonic structure of a tune, we just did this with Abercrombie all the time. We would just push and pull and stretch, and okay, it wouldn't be exactly 12 bars. Maybe it'd be 13, or maybe it'd be 12 and a half, or maybe it would be, who knows,
Yeah.
but, it had that flexibility.
How does that inform when you play free? I mean, when you play no tunes at all. I mean, that informs a
I
sense of
still think,
structure
I think we,
too, right?
you think like a composer, you start implying structure, even if you even haven't decided on one. So, for an instance, maybe Erskine would play a quarter note ride. Okay, now we have a pulse, but it's time no changes maybe. So that's one way of having a free piece. You have something going on that says, okay, we have a frame,
Yeah.
and now we're going to paint inside of it. And so it's like that. Now we have a pulse. So, well, we can play, time no changes. He can play shapes. He can do everything he wants, but we have this pulse that we're relating to. So that has a feel of some kind.
Mm.
Or another way of doing it is just play motivically. So little motifs that we kind of play off of. Or maybe I'll set up a harmonic pedal, and then that enables the soloist to play different tensions against that pedal that create, a sense of harmony or movement of some kind.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about playing melodies or improvising melodies, I always admire your ability to play lines that go in a very unexpected way. So you're always surprising me with how your lines go, but in the same time, the lines make sense, and there's a logic to them, which then gives the impression of being timeless or being like a composition in a way. I wonder how you worked on your melodic improvisations.
Well, funny, I didn't learn jazz chord scales the way a lot of horn players or pianists or guitarists really do. I had a pretty strong classical background, so my technique was kind of formed by the solo repertoire that I was working on, which was pretty classical. I mean, you think about it, like Kusevitsky and Bottesini and some transcriptions of, Ravel or this, that, but it's pretty melodic things, pretty diatonic, actually, for the most part. So I knew my major and minor scales. So I just kind of try to use what information that I knew, how to play the bass, fingerings and things and tonal keys that I could play in and out of. I think gradually I learned that just playing, with experience, I picked up enough theory that I knew a particular chord function, like, simple 2-5-1. I could play one scale across several chords. So then became, a little more linear in that regard, more horizontal, not so vertical through each chordal structure.
Right, yeah.
So I could find more common tones going horizontally instead of vertically arpeggiating through every chord. So that's a little different, I suppose. And just starting and stopping phrases in different places so they don't start and stop the same place or in the same way,
Right. Did a lot of did you also check a lot of horn players out and stuff like that? Because
things everybody is a influence at some point or another. I saw Eddie Gomez tell somebody once in writing, I think he was doing an interview, and he said, I think more like a trumpet, and in a way the bass does kind of have that kind of, especially if you're playing in the upper register, you do some repeated notes, you have some, it feels like a horn sometimes if you think about it. Not a saxophone, although I'd love to be able to play, legato scales and stuff like a sax, but you end up plucking more of the notes with a bass. So it feels a little more, I don't know, guitar, or
Yeah.
guitar comes close, but I still like to play more. I still go for some legato things, and if you listen to my playing enough, you'll hear that I'm slurring notes and stuff with my left hand. I'm not plucking every note.
Mm.
So it's a kind of a horn-like conception in terms of that, I guess.
Yeah.
Or vocal.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'm wondering, when you came up in the end of the 70s, who inspired you from your peers, maybe on the bass also? Who inspired you? What did you learn from your peers in your age?
Well, my peers, I mean, my first peers were at university, and you don't maybe know this guy. Bob Bowman was his name. And he was a student as I was, but his jazz conception was pretty advanced when I got to school. And so I learned a lot from him, just about articulation and feel and what it meant to be a jazz bass player. Because I really, at that point, was still steeped pretty well in the classical side of things. I listened more to Scott LaFaro as a result of his influence, I think, because I was really into the Eddie Gomez trio with Bill. And all through high school, that's what I was checking out.
Yeah.
But then I went back when I got to university. I started listening to people like Scott LaFaro, the other bassists with Gary Peacock a little bit, some of the ECM bass players like Dave Holland. They're a little older than me, but I guess I could still call them peers. Miroslav Vitus,
Yeah.
Eberhard Weber.
When you think of these guys, is there something that you can put your finger on? Some like something you admire about that guy or that guy? Yeah,
well, okay. So for Miroslav, it was just that period right in the end of the 60s and early 70s he was so imaginative and just on fire, and I never, his technique was great. His tune writing was cool. That Mountain in the Clouds album was something sensational. And I just loved that. I thought it was so inspiring. Jaco Pastorius was on the scene by early 70s, and he was doing crazy things on the electric bass, which I tried to apply to the upright, but it didn't quite work.
Yeah.
But some of that, some of that ostinato stuff that he would do, and his feel, his placement was just so beautiful. And where he rode within the beat was just something to be. It's indescribable. Well, you've heard it. And so then Dave Holland, what a sound, So and a language. He was really working on developing his own language with improvising on a bass. So I was interested in that, his sound mainly, and his kind of some of his ideas, just how he put things together. Older guys like Ron Carter I'd been listening to for a long time. I loved him with the Miles Davis Quintet, and that was some brilliant bass playing in those groups. Miles Smiles, great record. I wore that one out. But all those sides with those guys were unbelievable. And then my dad was a pianist, so he loved Oscar Peterson, as well as Bill Evans and Dave Brubeck and a bunch of others. But he had some Oscar Peterson side, so I was checking out Ray Brown. And Ray, for his pulse and his walking lines, are just beautiful. Wow, and again, another wonderful sound. Clear as a bell, and just his ideas were always so clear and so well formed, like beautiful compositions, just great lines. Then there's a bass player that's a little more obscure. Joey knows this guy because we talked about it, but Andy Simpkins, the bass player with the Three Sounds. Do you know that group with the Three Sounds with Gene Harris on piano? Check out an album called Blue Jeans, Genes, Blue Jeans.
Okay.
The feel they get is just gut bucket, funky, great. jazz playing. I
Mm.
just love that. If I could emulate anybody within a walking bass funkiness, it would be Andy Simpkins.
Mm.
Just that feel, man, what a feel! So great. It would put a smile on your face every
Great.
time. Just beautiful. Those are the main guys, Eddie and Scott, Gary Peacock.
How was Chuck Israels
These.
for you?
Hmm?
What's your take on Chuck Israels?
I love Chuck's playing. I think he was a good musician, really good musician, really solid, beautiful sound. But I think his contribution to the Bill Evans Trio was as an unsung hero, because who's going to come after Scott LaFaro?
Yeah.
But somebody needed to, and somebody with a strong enough personality to get Bill out of his funk to go play gigs, because I think Bill was kind of destroyed after Scott's passing.
Yeah.
So we're all grateful to Chuck for many things, and he's continued a life in music, and he's one of the most thoughtful, articulate speakers about music. Just thought. He writes well, and he's a deep guy. I like him a lot.
Moonbeams is one of my favorite Bill Evans records.
Yeah.
But so is Affinity, man. Affinity
with
is
Toots Stillman. Yeah.
Such a deep record. And I think it's your first record with him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a studio session.
What was the experience in the studio like?
It was fun. We were in that old Columbia Studios in the church, where Kind of Blue was recorded and a bunch of great records, So that had that mystique to it. And I never worked on an album like that, and that process was very interesting for me, because Bill would do a take, and then we would go in and listen, and they'd talk about it, and then they would say, okay, I'm going to do an intro in this key, and then you take the melody, and then I'll play two choruses, you play two choruses. I mean, he worked it out over the course of playing it once or twice. We figured out the format, and then in that process, I got to listen to the part that I was constructing, because then we knew a structure. It was the same every time. I knew that the solo was going to build like this. So you knew the arc of the solo, where it was going to begin and where it was going to end. So you could, as a bass player, I could get into first gear, second gear, and third gear, So it was great for that. And I had a beautiful time playing with them. Toots was so sweet, a lovely human being.
It shows in the music.
Yeah, it does. And it was a great session. I didn't know this at the time, but Bill was trying to do a different kind of texture and different kind of sound and project. He had called Ron Carter to play cello instead of Toots to play harmonica. But I think Ron turned down the gig for one reason or another. And I'm very grateful, actually. Sorry, Ron. I love your cello playing, but I really I didn't know Toots before, and it was we ended up collaborating. I played in Toots's band in the mid-'80s. We ended up collaborating later, and it was a really marvelous relationship.
There's some great records with you and Fred Hirsch and Joey and Toots.
Yeah, there are some. Couple, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I think also Toots brought out. I mean, it's the combination, of course, but Toots brought out some different aspects of Bill Evans' playing, especially in that record, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. As an accompanist, especially, got into some other things. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering, when you learn a song with Bill Evans together, would he show you sheet music, or would he sometimes also show you the song by playing? No,
usually we had the sheet music on it. Toots brought in a few tunes. I think Snow Peas is on that record, that Phil Markowitz tune, and they had sheet music, and then Bill would mark it up if you wanted to change the harmony or something. But that's basically all we had.
And when he would bring in a new standard for you guys to play, would he bring sheet music, or would he show you the standard, by playing it for you?
Sometimes, as I got into the group, he would just run a tune at sound check. Sometimes he would copy down. Often he would write down the changes for me, but sometimes it'd be on, hotel stationery.
Yeah.
It's great. I have those books. I still have all of those things. I kept them.
Oh man, I would
souvenirs.
love to see them.
Yeah.
I would love to see. I have a couple of his handwritten sheets, and I really like his handwriting. It really looks beautiful, and it shows how he thinks about stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
He had a shorthand. He had a way of writing chord symbols that was kind of revolutionary, I think, at the time, back in the 50s.
How so? How do you mean?
Well, some of the little triangle that you see for major 7.
Yeah.
I think that was one of his and Scott LaFaro's devices. And sometimes instead of an M for a minor 7, they'd write a horizontal
the minus
dash. Yeah. That kind of thing.
Oh, okay. So that's credited to him, you say. It's interesting. Now, when we talk about harmony with Bill, did he explain a couple of devices of his to you, like how to exchange harmony in a standard or in a tune?
No.
Could you
No,
ask?
he just expected me to hear it.
Yeah. But did you ask him sometimes about certain
I tried to, but he didn't feel like he was an educator. And he didn't want to go there.
Ah, okay.
I mean, he gave me some sheet music once. This was his lesson. He said, "Here, take these." He gave me like the original published version of Autumn in New York.
Wow, okay.
And if you see the original published version of music of anything, it's the most kind of basic vanilla harmony that they put on those things. Bill would rework the tunes that he did often because first of all, they needed it, but also because he wanted to feel the harmony move more.
Yeah.
So he said, here's the tune, go work out some harmony for it. So there's a fundamental harmony, and then there's another harmony that's maybe even more fundamental that I don't know. Bill just had a way of I can't speak to that depth of harmony that he, You talk to my wife, Eliane, she'll tell you more about it.
Well, I think it shows in your playing that you know exactly.
I think it's more intuitive for me than anything.
Okay.
Bill didn't like me to play the same note in a row. He thought that if I played if we're playing quarter notes, he wanted to have more movement in the line, not to play, if it's C minor 7, he didn't want to hear 2 or 3 the note 2 or 3 times in the bar.
Yeah.
Once was enough. Harmony's a funny thing because you can destroy a tune, make it sound like unrecognizable. But Bill had a way of making a standard, just making it sound better, like more understandable and more beautiful. Because of the way that the harmony would move from one chord to another, or for a function, maybe across. He would harmonize the melody notes in a way so that it had more movement. And I think as a pianist, you must have studied and know a little bit what those inner voicings do. When you move from like a sus chord to a dominant.
Yeah.
That little movement there just sets up enough little tension and resolution system, just going from one chord to the next. But that kind of thing,
Yeah. I mean, I read that the first time you played with him was sitting at the Village Vanguard. Is that correct?
That's right.
And then in another interview, I heard you talk about an audition. So
well, it was kind of an audition. I mean, the sitting in at the Vanguard was already an audition.
Okay, yeah. But there wasn't another audition afterwards, or this was it?
Well, I guess you could call it. I guess I was still on probation. He didn't hire me fully until we did a gig. I think it was. I thought it was in Europe, and if I'm not mistaken, Tony Bennett was on that date.
Uh-huh.
Was he singing a tune with Bill? I can't remember exactly. It's a little fuzzy in my mind. But after that particular gig, it was a radio taping or TV taping or something, and Bill, he came to me and said, "Yeah, when I hire somebody, I usually like at least a year commitment." So he put it like this: "So if it's all right with you, I'd like to hire you for a year, and we'll see how it goes." You know, I said, "It's all right with me."
Yeah.
Are you kidding? So I was I was on cloud nine for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Wow.
I'm grateful for his philosophy because it does take about a year of playing together for the chemistry and for the knowledge of the music to really get ingrained, you know. And his book, he had a pretty good sized book, you know. He had a lot of material that he drew from, and although I had steeped my listening years in Bill's, I kind of knew it just from osmosis, I guess, if nothing else. But I was familiar enough with his book. But I didn't want to not read the sheet music. I think I had the sheet music on a music stand for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then finally, in Paris, it was at Espace Cardin, that actually became an album called the Paris
Volume 1 and Volume 2?
Volumes 1 and 2. And that was the first gig I didn't use the music.
Wow. I just listened to that before I called you. Yeah.
Man, 34 Skidoo scared me to death.
Oh, yeah.
You know how that moves? I had to solo on that.
Yep.
I was scared to death.
Mm-hmm. How do you deal with a situation like that?
I just holding on for dear life, you know. I was always in a panic, you know. But Bill and Joe were so great, you know. They were such consummate musicians, and they would buoy you up, you know. If you felt like you were tripping or stumbling, they would never let you down.
Mm.
Yeah, Bill was very generous like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you analyze a couple of his songs also, like away from the stage?
Some tunes like "Re-Person" I knew had a lot of minor, major sevens, so I worked out, you know, what were the common tones through the harmony.
Yeah.
So I could play a better melody when I was improvising on that.
Mm.
I studied, you know, some of the tunes he played were in unfamiliar keys, like Up with the Lark. It's like E major, A major. Those are not familiar keys as much for me. I was more into the flat keys, you know. So I was.
Although you're a bassist.
Yeah, you'd think that I would know those better, but just as a jazz player, they're not as familiar, you know. So I kind of studied that a little bit more, some of the ins and outs and where the notes lie on the bass.
Right. I heard somebody who talked with him about Time Remembered, and he said something like he wanted to do something with half steps and perfect fifths. And like when you think about the harmony, that's a lot of the movement.
He never talked about that to me.
Oh, okay.
No. But I will tell you that when we were playing Nardis, he was exploring that, and he had been listening to that Rachmaninoff themes and variations on a theme by Paganini.
Yeah.
So if you listen to how he develops his solo out front, the introduction, especially on the Paris concerts, it's so well executed. It's very thematic in how the each chorus develops and proceeds from chorus to chorus.
Mm.
Very almost composed the way it's not composed. He improvised it, but structured like a composition. Very beautiful. And he was doing some things harmonically that were, I thought, new for him. If you listen to the Narvis, it's really cool.
Yeah. It got freer and freer throughout these years, right?
Yeah.
His intro especially.
He called that his therapy.
It makes sense.
He said, no matter what's going on the whole night, it could be the worst night of all. But when we come to that tune, he said, that's our therapy. And he said, we're going to go into it and something's going to happen.
Right. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
You've mentioned Paul Motion when you started to play with him. There's that great Bill Evans record. I mean, tribute record to Bill Evans. And in the last days, when I was, of course, going back to a lot of records that I know in and out from you, but also I tried to find a couple of records that I haven't heard before. And one of the records I found is the record with Masabumi and Paul Motion, Miles Mode. I really love that one.
Oh.
And yeah, I think you had a really unique feel with Paul. And you already touched a little bit on that, but I think, of course, you have an obvious connection and relationship. How was it after the fact? Having played with Bill Evans for so long and then getting Paul's perspective on things. How did that inform your experience? Maybe
I thought, for me, it kind of came full circle because I was such a devotee of Scott LaFaro. He was front and center to my whole reason for being a jazz bassist. Really, when push comes to shove, I'd have to say he's the most important voice for me.
Yeah. As
a bassist. So having played with Bill and then get to play with Paul was really and Paul's playing had matured and developed and evolved, had evolved conceptually, more modern in a way than Bill, at least from a exploration of time and structures and different kinds of ways of playing and shaping time, and just so beautiful. It was an evolution, and Bill died too soon, if you ask me, but Paul kept moving. Well, playing with Keith Jarrett and Charlie Hayden, the music was moving, it was developing. And so Paul, I got to experience that, the result of that development in Paul's playing. So conceptually, it was really open, very, I'd say understated. Like if you really listen to Paul's vocabulary, he's not like a Buddy Rich kind of player or anything. He doesn't wow you with technique. I mean, he had some technique. He could play the ideas that he wanted to get out. But it was more about placement and sound and space.
Yeah. And energy also.
And energy, but pulse. I mean, there was always this beautiful pulse. If it was 4/4 or if it was a ballad, it didn't matter. It was like this beautiful pulse, and it was so solid but so alive, and you could play anything over it. I mean, I really really felt the most liberated in a way playing with Paul Motion. Felt like my soloing could really launch. I could really launch with him, and I could play across the bar. I could speed up, slow down. I could do, you could do anything with him, and he would always just be right there. You could even screw up and get lost, and he'd still be like right there. It was great.
Wow.
Boy, I've been really fortunate, I have to say. I've played with some really great drummers.
Wow. Yeah. There's a trio with Paul Motion and Chris Potter also that I really like. I have a bootleg of that band.
Did that get recorded?
I guess so. I mean, I don't know, on the record I don't know, but I have a bootleg of that band, and it's beautiful. It's very you guys go out there also. It's
Yeah,
you covered a lot of ground with the repertoire also. Playing Paul's tunes, some
yeah, that
standards,
was
Chris's
fun.
tunes.
We also played with Wolfgang Mussspiel.
Oh yeah,
Are you?
yeah, sure, yeah. I don't
And
know Wolfgang. Yeah.
we played some of Paul's tunes and with Wolfgang and with Piranunzi. We were always sort of exploring some of Paul's music
Mm,
with these different ensembles. So, like Gang of Five, I must have played that in 3 or 4 different ensembles.
mm,
It was fun, wide open,
yeah.
It's cool.
Mark, do you have a daily routine that you always go when you have time?
Not really. I'm just trying my best to maintain, what little technique I still have. I go to the bass and, play a few long tones and just try to keep my fingers so it's somewhat limber, a couple of scales, and
Yeah.
get up and down the fingerboard.
As a last topic, maybe you can talk about something that you've listened to recently that really really moved you, that you would like to share.
I hate to say this, but I just put the Three Sounds on the other day, and I listened to the whole record again. I just love that album, Blue Jeans.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out after this.
Good. It's fun. It's a feel good record.
Yeah, we have to have those, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great, Mark. Thank
All
you
right,
so
Bob.
much for doing this. And
Yeah. Well, my pleasure. Let's do it some more.